This is Reality Check. I'm Matt.
And I'm Chris. We're two licensed therapists.
And two military veterans.
And we're here to smash societal fantasy
so you can live in reality. Welcome back to Reality Check.
Today's reality check, it's not the therapist's job to affirm you.
This is a really good opportunity for us to talk about what therapy is and what it isn't. You and I have both been very irritated by seeing so many commercials and movies and TV shows where you have a therapist sit there and just listen, and how does that make you feel?
Right.
That's
and when it comes to
therapy.
TV and movies, like it's that disgusting blanket affirmation, and that's when they're not actively having sex with their clients. Like,
right. Well,
every freaking TV show, I would dare somebody to actually make a competent TV show or movie that has a balls to the walls therapist that's like, I'm going to challenge you, I'm going to push you, you're going to grow, but I'm not going to just kiss your ass for an hour at a time.
I think they tried to do that with that movie with Matt Damon and Robin Williams. Do you remember which movie I'm talking about?
So do you mean Good Will Hunting?
Good Will Hunting, yes, that's it. So Good Will Hunting, they attempt to do it because Robin Williams is really pressing Matt Damon's character really, really hard. The problem, though, is when Hollywood tries to go there, they make it more like a life coach because you can see no actual therapy is taking place. Another good example, it's a movie with Denzel Washington in the Navy, and he's a therapist. I can't remember the name.
Oh my God, Antoine Fisher, because I love that movie.
Antoine
That's
Fisher.
like the best thing.
So then what did you think about that one?
That was great because it, like, the relationship started off like with really bad rapport. I mean, Antoine Fisher had like explosive disorder, mood disorder, really, really unstable stuff. But in the end, like, Denzel Washington's character challenged him in such a way that he actually grew to have a successful career in the Navy. Mm-hmm. And the best thing about it was, like, he processed his family trauma, he confronted his demons, he grew as a person, and like, that's what therapy is. It's not, oh, well, you're just a sad guy, and, we'll release you from the Navy, or, oh, you're just a sad guy, like, we'll give you this special star to wear on your uniform that says, like, well, you're just sad and everyone should leave you alone or treat you with kid gloves. Like, no, you're not special, you're not brave and beautiful or whatever that garbage is. You have a problem, you need tools and insight to overcome it. Let's get to work.
And he confronted it and he overcame it, and like you said, he had a successful career.
Right.
So we did find one.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare to find one that's decent, and even that, I don't think it's representative of what the inside of a therapy room looks like.
Yeah, no.
But I don't, unless you find a therapist turned Hollywood screenwriter and director, you're probably never going to quite get it.
Right.
But at least it's a reference point, Good Will Hunting and Antoine Fisher, for at least a little bit more of what therapy is like.
Right.
And certainly when you and I do therapy, it's challenging people. So whenever I do an intake session, for those of you who don't know it, it's your first session with a therapist, and we're gathering information, we're understanding what the issues are, what the background is, we're putting together a plan, because I've got to build out the treatment plan and what our objectives, we've got to do all this stuff, and so that's our first session. And so in this intake session, I make sure people understand what they're getting and who they're getting and what my approach is. Very, very rarely does it happen that they don't want their approach and they leave.
No.
That's happened maybe 2 or 3 times in all the years I've been doing it.
Right.
Usually when they reject it, they just do a few sessions and they quit, and that's pretty rare too.
No.
But I'm very, very blunt with them, and I tell them I'm a very blunt person, and they say, well, good, that's what I want to hear. I don't want to come here. Most people will say, I don't want to come here for you to tell me what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And I've had people tell me, in fact, somebody went to see you. This is really neat because she had seen a different therapist.
Yeah.
And she said, I went to this therapist and I loved her. Like, she was so nice. And I thought I could hang out with her on the weekends.
Yep.
And then I thought to myself, then why do I need her as a therapist?
Right.
And I said, I think I've got the person for you. And I sent her over to you. And she was like, thank you, because he challenged me and I grinded and I discovered things and I grew. your hairdresser, I'm sorry, is not a therapist.
No.
Your hairdresser is a hairdresser. Your bartender is a bartender.
Right.
Your pastor is a pastor. Whatever that person is,
No.
but they're not a therapist. A therapist challenges you and takes you on a journey of self-discovery, self-love, of progress. And that progress can actually be defined and quantified in a way that you can look from the beginning to the middle to the end, and you know that real progress has been made.
Right. So, let's take a recent example, and I'll use this one. If nobody's heard of him, it's Dylan Mulvaney. And Dylan Mulvaney is, I will just say, a mental health prime example of what happens when you fail yourself and when the mental health industry fails you. Because not only does this guy identify as female, but he identifies as a girl. Not even a woman, a girl. Right? And it's saying wow, how much childhood trauma or how much trauma have you experienced that you would talk about ending the life of what he called boy Dylan and transition to girl Dylan, right? And I could just see it now. It's like some therapists would just be like, oh yes, oh, you know what, you're a girl and you've always been a girl and be the bravest little girl you can always be. No. You're a dumpster fire of trauma. We're going to get you put together. It's going to take a while. It's going to be hard, but you can do it.
And guess what? You're going to find the adult version of you. You're going to love that person. You're going to be successful. And you're not going to run away from your problems. If I had someone who came to me who was anorexic and wanted treatment, you know what I could say? You are perfect as you are.
No.
You know what? You're right. There might be a little bit of fat underneath that third rib. Let's go get you some liposuction.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I get to be the cool therapist.
Yeah.
I get to be in. Maybe the cabal will accept me because I'm helping create little drones who have no identity.
Right.
But that's not what therapy is. Therapy has never been that. True therapy has always been challenging.
No.
And if you come to me and you're anorexic, I'm not going to shame you. People say, oh, you're going to shame her. Of course I wouldn't shame her.
Right.
What would that have to do with anything? What we do is I help her stop shaming herself. I help her find herself.
It's kind of so you bring that up. So I have a client right now that's suffering from anorexia. And I could have just said thin as in, right? Be your best hollowed out skeleton, right? Or we dug and it was a trauma that she experienced in the 5th grade where she was heavier and felt powerless, but then lost the weight and people started liking and respecting her, so she associated being thin with being powerful. And it's now the challenge is, how can you be any weight, how can you be any lifestyle but still feel powerful? And that's the work that we're doing. It's not you just have to be a skeleton to be powerful.
This is the thing that I think gets missed so much. Part of it's because people are uncomfortable talking about trauma. It's just something, and so what we do instead is we just skip over it and we just don't mention it. But most people who struggle with identity, the vast majority, have a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And if you've done any real therapy, not the butterfly therapy, not the, hey, you're perfect, spread your wings and fly, the kind of therapy, which is not therapy.
Right. You need to run. If you got a therapist that's like that, run. If you got any gender affirming therapists out there that you go to that are we just gotta give you a penis and you're good. Run really fast. Run away. That's not a therapist. That is somebody who's trying to dishonestly sell you that if you do this, then you will be happy forever, instead of just if you buy a new suit, or if you buy a new car, if you buy a new something, you'll be happy temporarily. But once that goes away, you're still with yourself. And once you realize that you have irreparably mutilated your body, or if you've taken hormones and you've irreparably damaged your body, which if you do take hormones, that's what you're doing. Don't let people lie to you. There's no studies that can actually say that it doesn't. You can't go back. And now somebody has done you a disservice, right? So therapy challenges you. therapy is not the quick fix. Therapy is hard work. That's why if you see like the Kuhn and Friends logo for my company, it's two guys trying to push a boulder up a hill, because that crap is hard, right? And sometimes you need a friend, you need somebody to help you. And that's why I'm not your friend, but I'll give you the tools and insight to help you and challenge you and give you the ability to push that boulder.
So that gender affirming therapist is not actually pushing the boulder with you.
No.
The gender affirming therapist is saying, just stay in this pit that you're in.
Yeah.
You're in this muck, and you are miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And you're never going to get out of it, because I'm going to tell you instead, I'm going to lie to you and say, no, this muck you're in, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Why would you ever want to get out of it? See, how lazy is that?
Right.
And the other thing about it, if that's your therapist, understand your therapist is probably getting their own needs met.
Yeah.
And it's at your expense.
Right.
So, yes, run from those therapists. Seek out a therapist who's going to challenge you and help you to grow. Think about this.
No.
Now, people can challenge what we're saying, but I'm going to give you something that you're not going to be able to challenge very easily. Let's take someone with depression. Mm-hmm. Let's take the other factors out. Let's measure it, because they have scales to measure this.
Mm-hmm.
I love empirical data, assessments that we can use that are going to track it. And we can look at it before, we can look at it during. I love to do this. Let's track it, right? And a valid assessment that's reliable. And it doesn't belong to a cool club. It doesn't have to, measure up the society. It's just going to give you the facts.
Right.
So we take something like this transgender, or say just gender affirming therapy, and you measure, take like Beck Depression Inventory, for example, and you measure that throughout the whole lifespan of the therapy. And here's how it tends to go, because I do this for a living, and so I know.
Right.
I've seen people transition. Not me personally, I don't do that with people, but I know other therapists do, and I've known the clients, and sometimes they come to me for one thing and that person to another. And anyway, I've been around it enough to see it and to see assessments and things. What happens is they start depressed, they stay depressed, they transition, and there's a couple of weeks, maybe a month, where the numbers shoot through the roofs and they're so happy, and then after that, it's right back to where it was, if not worse. And so this is the one I'm trying to tell you. It doesn't work, and the empirical data shows that it actually doesn't work. Tell me what it works for. Does it work for depression, anxiety? Does it work for PTSD? What does it work for? All you've done is given them a false reality to go live in.
Yeah.
And told them that no, as I said before, you're not living in the muck. You're living in fairyland, and the reality is the empirical data shows that you're no better off.
Right. Right. And a lot of these hospitals don't even use empirical measures to like measure these type of things. Like they'll use questions like, are you happy with your breasts? And then if you mark no, it could be for a number of reasons, right? Like maybe you're going through puberty and they hurt, or maybe you are just like, I don't look like a Sports Illustrated model, so I'm not happy, right? And so that's an identity thing that you have to work through. It could be any number of reasons, but they take, you marked no on this. You want to just cut them off? You want to just do a mastectomy? Like, we'll just get that done, right?
But look what your therapist gets out of this. So after enough of doing this kind of work, you're going to get somebody who is now, say they've transitioned, or any number of other things. It's not just about gender transition. There's a lot of other things that apply here too. But later down the road, now you have these people who will attest to the fact that, oh yes, my therapist helped me do this, my therapist helped me do that. Now I'm a man, now I'm this, now I'm that. So now they're building up some social credibility among the people that they're seeking validation from.
Right.
And they're able to then put themselves on a pedestal and put other therapists or other professionals, especially non-professionals, as beneath them. And this is something from the beginning of mankind people have always been trying to do. And this will be another reality check. But when we say mankind, we understand that in the history of our language, and which goes back many languages, like Germanic languages and Romance languages, the term man is synonymous with human. So you can say humankind or mankind, but it's the same thing. We talk about the history of mankind, humankind. There's always been people who have had this unhealthy need to be better than other people. And they have always put people underneath them
Right.
and stepped on their backs to climb higher. And if you have that kind of therapist, that therapist might be stepping on your back to stand up higher than everyone, to look better than everyone else. And that's the need they're getting, and the needs that you have aren't being addressed. So here's another tip. If you're doing therapy, use empirical measures. Say, hey, what assessment can I take?
Right.
Can I take, there's a GAD, right? And there's a, like I said, there's the Beck, there's the Taylor-Johnson temperament analysis. There's a number of things that you can use.
Right.
And GAD just stands for generalized anxiety disorder, but there's the GAD assessment. Measure these things empirically. See if you're getting better, but take real ones, because if you take some of the phony ones, you're going to be able to kind of manipulate them. Things like the Taylor-Johnson temperament analysis, well, it has built-in scales to kind of to see if you're skewing it one way or the other.
Right.
And you need that kind of thing. Like the MMPI has a built-in lie scale in case you're lying to yourself, which sometimes we do. Challenge your therapist, or leave and get a therapist who will actually do their job.
Right, but you're not going to find these are not like quizzes on Facebook, right? You actually have to go to a professional, which you would know as well as I did, and the audience does too, because I read this letter in a session. I want to reinforce that the letter that I read was written by a doctor's level psychologist, right? It has no limit to the amount of empirical psychological evaluations that they can perform. Right? And what did I read? A gobbledygook of self-reported measures. Oh, well, he doesn't say that he's depressed. He says that he's a good person. Like, oh, I think he seems okay. Like, what is that? What is that? When I have court-appointed matters that I have to weigh in on, I use multiple points for an evaluation. I use multiple exams. I give fine detail. Like my court reports, like sometimes judges don't like me because I'll write them and they'll be long, but they'll be detailed and they'll be thorough and they'll leave no room for doubt as to what the condition of a person is. Like not just I just call it garbage. It's garbage.
Well, and the thing is when you lack empirical data, and when the empirical data really isn't allowed to hit the general public, because I'm telling you this is true. YouTube and Facebook and things, they have algorithms and they weed out a lot of this stuff. They don't want certain things to get out there, and it will just weed them out, or they'll label it as hate speech or this and that when you're just trying to tell the truth. Because here's the reality: is the therapist's job is to help that client get better. If you go to a doctor and you have high blood pressure, you expect to get your blood pressure lowered.
Right.
If you go to a therapist with anxiety, you should expect that your anxiety is improved.
Right.
If you have trauma, you expect that trauma to be healed. Now, that you might not ever be completely healed, but you can improve greatly.
Right.
And your standard of living should increase a lot from a mental health point of view. And these are the standards that we're not holding up. But let's take its empirical data in the general public. Like I said, it's discouraged. Journals don't like to talk about it. YouTube, Facebook, and all that have their algorithms, so we don't see it a lot.
Right.
And the reason we don't see it a lot is because it's not going to affirm this message that's out there that by mutilating our bodies we're actually helping ourselves, which is a lie, and the empirical data does not back that up. Now, I want to say with empirical data, there are ways to manipulate data. There are organizations that specialize in data that is skewed in a certain way, and that's why you have to have peer-reviewed things. And if you don't know what peer-reviewed is, that means there's multiple organizations that are doing the same studies and finding the same things roughly within certain within certain parameters. But that's really, really important. But here's the bigger point we have to get to, is that we can't talk about this, and I'll use this to explain it. So I've got this friend of mine who's an attorney, and this is what he said. He said, as an attorney, we are taught to, he just what he did, he said, bang the facts.
Yeah.
But if the facts are not on our side, then we're taught to bang the law.
Yes.
But if the facts and the law both are not on our side, then we're taught to bang the podium.
Yes.
So, it's so funny when I heard him say this, because I thought, in the general public, they don't have the facts on their side.
Yep.
right? They don't have the law on their side. They don't have anything on their side. So they're just banging the podium and they're saying, you bigots, you mean people.
Right.
How do you have no compassion for all these people? But they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yes.
They don't have empirical data on their side. They don't have the science on their side. They have nothing on their side. They don't have outcomes.
Right.
They don't have their gender affirming therapy. They don't have clients coming to them. And the reasons they come, like I said, depression, anxiety,
Right.
OCD, those aren't improving.
Right. And so I love that you say that, because it also reminds me of like something that the far left uses called the science, TM, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's such garbage. So if you guys think that just because a bunch of doctors come out that this puberty blockers and gender affirming care is valid, let me tell you what was debunked before that scientists just chomped at the bit to endorse, which was the serotonin theory of depression. Believed that doctors fully endorsed the fact that if you just raise your serotonin levels, you won't be depressed anymore. You won't. That was debunked. That was a lie spread by the pharmaceutical companies to push drugs. But the same doctors and the same con artists came out and fully supported it because they wanted their cut of the money.
They're still doing it.
And they're still doing it.
How many clients have you had with depression that are taking SSRIs
Yep.
or MOAIs and they're still depressed?
All of them. Because that is not the cure-all.
I've had some have some slight improvements in mood, but when you account for the side effects, it's not really doing a whole lot.
No.
And so we got to wrap this segment up. But the point is to understand what a therapist is supposed to do. Challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
Give you internal strength. Help
Right.
you find yourself. Help you stand on your own 2 feet. I tell my clients all the time, I am trying to fire myself every day.
Yeah.
I want no one to need me.
It's true. And I will tell you straight up, like, if you're a therapist and you're just getting by the validation of your clients, you either need to go do your own work or you need to turn in your license. Like, this is ridiculous. You are hurting people by giving them a limitless supply of the feel goods. Like, you should be ashamed of yourself and you need to do the work.
It's like we're talking about last time. They're giving them the shiny piece of tin, the raccoon who sticks his hand in there, won't let it go, and then can't get out and will bite their own arm off.
Right.
So, all right, we'll see you next time.